Hi, and welcome to episode 102 of Toke Signals TV, where we bring you the biggest in cannabis and hemp news stories every week. I'm Steve Elliott, the editor at tokesignals.com, and I'll be guiding you through the news. Well, it's harvest time in Colorado, and somewhere in Colorado from a very pretty cannabis patch, we have this beautiful Ortega flower. She's an indica. She was developed from Northern Lights genetics, and you can see for yourself that that's some gorgeous medicine. Let's do the news now, shall we? In the United States, a Senate spending package includes major marijuana law reforms. This new package of spending bills in the Senate, intended to keep the federal government operational for the next year, includes several positive changes in marijuana law. The bills were filed on Tuesday by Senator Thad Cochran, a Republican from Mississippi. He's chairman of the Senate Appropriations Committee, and they've just been uploaded to Congress's website, according to marijuana.com. The new spending package put forth by the top Senate appropriator includes, well, everything us marijuana law reformers could have reasonably hoped for this year, said Tom Angel, chairman of Marijuana Majority. We won bipartisan votes on all these issues this year on either the House floor, in the Senate Appropriations Committee, or both. So this is a rare case of congressional leadership actually listening to their members and to the American people, Angel said. Just a few short years ago, politicians used to jump all over each other to be seen as the toughest on drugs, Angel said. But now that polls consistently show that a growing majority of Americans support legalization, more elected officials are beginning to realize that scaling back failed prohibition policies is not only the right thing to do, but it's politically smart. Now, if enacted, these bills would prevent the Department of Justice and the DEA from spending money to interfere with the implementation of state medical marijuana laws. Similar language was enacted last year and is current law. It would prevent the DOJ and the DEA from spending money to interfere with the implementation of state industrial hemp research programs. Similar language was enacted last year and is current law. It would allow doctors with the Department of Veterans Affairs to recommend medical marijuana for military veterans and prevent the VA from denying services to veterans because they are medicinal cannabis patients in accordance with state law. It would prevent the federal government from punishing banks for doing business with state legal marijuana providers. And it would allow the District of Columbia to move forward with enacting marijuana sales regulations that the mayor and local lawmakers have indicated they support, but those have been stymied from being implemented due to congressional interference. Now, Senator Cochran and other Senate leaders are currently negotiating with House Appropriations Committee leaders and are expected to reach a compromise spending package sometime before government funding under current law runs out on December 11th. If you happen to hear a pounding on the roof, my apartment building is being re-roofed today, and there's just no avoiding it, it seems. In the next story, a poll shows that Florida and Ohio voters support marijuana legalization. Pennsylvania voters are divided on the topic. Voters in Florida and Ohio back the legalization of marijuana for personal recreational use, while Pennsylvania voters are divided according to a Quinnipiac University swing state poll released on Thursday. Men support legalized marijuana for personal use more than women in each of the states, the poll finds. The swing state poll focused on Florida, Ohio, and Pennsylvania because since 1960, no presidential candidate has ever won without taking at least two of those three swing states. Voters in all three states, by overwhelming margins, support legalizing marijuana for medical purposes. There is no gender gap on this question. Men and women support medicinal cannabis equally. Only about 1 in 10 voters opposes legalizing medical marijuana, according to Peter Brown, assistant director of the university poll. Also, in all three states, most voters said they wouldn't use marijuana even if personal use were legalized. If men are from Mars and women are from Venus, then the red planet might be the more spacey place, Brown said. That's because men are more likely than women to support legalization of marijuana for recreational use. Not surprisingly, support for the change is linked to age, with younger voters more likely to see personal use of pot as a good thing, according to Brown. But despite the support for legalization, a majority of voters in Florida, Ohio, and Pennsylvania say they would not use pot even if it were legal. In California this week, Governor Brown vetoed a new hash crimes bill. California Governor Jerry Brown on Saturday vetoed a bill which would have created new penalties for making hash oil with flammable chemicals like butane. Brown said the state already has enough laws and a prison overcrowding problem to boot, and it doesn't need to make those problems worse. The Golden State has seen a rise in explosions and fires caused by the extraction of cannabis concentrates using volatile solvents like butane. But it's already against the law to make butane hash oil, BHO, in Cali. Arson and criminal negligence are also already crimes there. Assembly Bill 849 from East Bay Assembly member Susan Bonilla would have created a new crime carrying prison sentences of up to 6 years for BHO blasters who hurt others. The bill passed the California Assembly unanimously on August 31st. But Governor Brown vetoed AB 849 and 8 others for good measure, blasting reactionary get-tough laws that result in prison overcrowding but don't do a damn thing to improve public safety. Each of these bills creates a new crime, usually by finding a novel way to characterize and criminalize conduct that is already proscribed, Governor Brown said. This multiplication and particularization of criminal behavior creates increasing complexity without commensurate benefit. Over the last several decades, California's criminal code has grown to more than 5,000 separate provisions, covering almost every conceivable form of human behavior, Brown said. During that same period, our jail and prison populations have exploded. Before we keep going down this road, I think we should pause and reflect on how our system of criminal justice could be made more human, more just, and more cost-effective, Governor Brown said. AB 849's mandatory sentencing would have stripped judges of their discretion, a practice which is becoming increasingly unpopular across the country. Not coincidentally, the United States currently has the highest incarceration rate of any civilization in human history. In Oregon this week, a union negotiates its first cannabis worker contract in the state. At least one labor union has begun to organize workers in Oregon's marijuana industry. United Food and Commercial Workers Local 555 recently negotiated a 3-year contract for employees at a Portland dispensary, and the union hopes to broker similar deals across the state as the cannabis dispensary takes off, according to Local 555 Secretary-Treasurer Jeff Anderson. The initial contract provides for wages starting at $15 an hour for cashiers, $20 an hour for trimmers, and up to $32 an hour for master cultivators at Stoney Brothers Dispensary. Paid holidays and vacation days are also guaranteed in the contract, along with pension contributions and employer-subsidized health insurance. Our ULCW International Union has been involved in cannabis organizing for 6 to 8 years, much of it in Northern California involving medical dispensaries, Anderson said. The union represents about 3,000 marijuana workers in 10 legal and medical states and D.C., according to Anderson. In Massachusetts this week, doctors are using marijuana as an opioid substitute. Hundreds of opioid addicts in Massachusetts are being treated with medical marijuana, and advocates say the new therapy is a life-changing alternative to the deadly epidemic of painkiller addiction. We have a statewide epidemic of opioid deaths, said Dr. Gary Whitman of CannaCare Docs, which issues medicinal cannabis authorizations in 7 states and has 9 clinics in Massachusetts. As soon as we can get people off opioids to a non-addicting substance, and medicinal marijuana is non-addicting, I think it would dramatically improve the amount of opioid deaths, Dr. Whitman said. Whitman said he's treated about 80 patients who were addicted to opioid painkillers, muscle relaxers, or anti-anxiety pharmaceuticals, using cannabis with a 1-month tapering program, and more than 75% of those patients stopped taking the harder drugs. Cannabis can treat the symptoms patients had been using opioids and other drugs to manage, such as chronic pain or anxiety, and treat them far more safely, according to Whitman. Dr. Harold Altvader of Delta 9 Medical Consulting in Malden, Massachusetts, agreed that he's also seen success with medicinal cannabis as a substitution therapy. You are basically taking something that can be very harmful for an individual and substituting with another chemical just like you would with any other drug, he said, that has a wider safety margin. What we are seeing is that in follow-up visits, patients have decreased and even eliminated their opioids, said Dr. Yuma Dinabalan of Uplifting Health and Wellness in Natick, Massachusetts, adding that cannabis works far better than other alternatives. It's a problem when we are replacing one synthetic opioid with another synthetic opioid because, guess what? Synthetic opioids kill. Cannabis does not. Medical cannabis works on the neurological level on what is known as the endocannabinoid system, the ECS, binding to neurological receptors involved in appetite, pain, sensation, mood, and memory. Opioids work less effectively, Whitman said. Endocannabinoids are even more powerful and the therapeutic benefits are even better, he said. In Illinois this week, legal medical marijuana smells like money and jobs. The skunky aroma of marijuana in a rural southeastern Illinois town isn't a source of complaints. In fact, to most residents there, it smells like money and jobs. It's almost harvest time in the historic town of Albion, which means a new farmland ritual is beginning amid the surrounding cornfields. Ataraxia is one of a handful of cultivation centers in Illinois, and it's the first to complete a gauntlet of state requirements. Stores in Albion can't sell liquor, but marijuana has been welcomed as a badly needed source of employment. A t-shirt for sale in town makes light of this odd juxtaposition. It says Albion is high and dry. That's okay, marijuana is safer than alcohol. It's brought our little town to life, said Cheryl Taylor, who sells the shirts at her shop on the square. The history-making cannabis crop is being cut and dried behind the locked doors of a giant warehouse down a country road, behind the New Holland tractor dealer and the Pioneer seed plant. By mid-October, strains including Blue Dream, OG Kush, Death Star, and White Poison will be turned into oils, creams, flours for smoking, and edibles. Illinois' highly restrictive medicinal cannabis program is meant to avoid easy access. Until the state in late September gave approval for the Associated Press to tour the facility, only company workers and government inspectors had ever been allowed inside the warehouse. Albion, a community of 1,900 people, has embraced this change. It's a good thing for the local economy, said Doug Raber, an insurance salesman. This is a pretty conservative area. Any kind of revenue we can get here is good. Ataxia CEO George Arcos said he wants to hire 50 or 60 people, but so far only 7 employees aside from managers are on the permanent payroll. With just 3,000 approved medical marijuana patients in Illinois, the company can't afford to expand yet. In Oregon this week, marijuana dispensaries reported massive recreational sales. Medical marijuana dispensaries in the state of Oregon remained busy throughout the weekend after opening their doors to recreational customers last Thursday. The Oregon legislature approved tax-free recreational sales through medicinal cannabis dispensaries through the end of this year. Many of the shops opened at the stroke of midnight Thursday morning and were greeted with long lines of excited customers. Those lines continued all weekend with thousands of customers checking out the shops. It was amazing, said Ben Hebert, owner of Dr. Jolly's in Bend, Oregon. We were totally busy all the time. I think we had a lot of people coming out of here. Sales reached $55,000 on the first day alone, according to Aviv Hadar, a co-founder of Orgrown Industries, which has a dispensary in Bend. As many as 2,000 customers shopped at his dispensary on the first day, according to Hadar. Our day 2 is bigger than most people's day 1, Hadar said. Brothers Cannabis in Portland was one of the shops which opened at midnight. Co-owner Nero Thal said the shop is serving 600 people a day, about 20 times more than they usually do. We're getting a lot of out-of-town folks and from Vancouver, he said. Green Front in Portland stays open 24 hours a day to capture more of the market in a competitive field. More than 100 dispensaries are operating in Portland, and more than half of those are licensed to sell recreational customers. Everything went really smoothly, said Matt Wallstatter, owner of Pure Green in Portland. It's been awesome. Before we go this week, we have a must-read story on Toke Signals. It is about one of the marijuana lifers, and it's by Sherry Sicard, an activist who works hard to get these men out of prison. Former Marine Billy Deacle is serving life for pot. After growing up on a farm and serving in the Marines, North Florida native Billy Deacle found his true passion in aviation. But he then became a marijuana pilot, and he got a life sentence. To read about the story, see TokeSignals.com this week. Hope to see you again next week. Until then, stay lifted.